Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me.
The moon hung low over the desolate landscape, casting elongated shadows across the ruins of what was once the proud temple of Illyria. Whispering winds carried the faint echoes of chants long forgotten, as two figures cloaked in darkness approached the temple's crumbling entrance. Niles, the dark sorcerer, moved with a purpose that belied his seemingly frail frame. His eyes glinted like obsidian as he surveyed the ancient stones etched with protective runes. Beside him, Albert the necromancer clutched a tome bound in worn leather, its pages filled with forbidden knowledge. The two exchanged a silent nod before stepping over the threshold, entering a sanctuary where no light dared to penetrate. "Are you certain this will work?" Albert's voice was a raspy whisper, heavy with anticipation. Niles smirked. "With our powers combined, not even the gods can stop us." They approached the center of the temple, where a faded sigil marked the floor. Together, they began to chant in a language that twisted the very air around them. Shadows pooled and coalesced, seeping into the cracks of the earth. The ground trembled as a fissure opened, releasing a torrent of dark energy that surged skyward, blotting out the stars. From villages miles away, terrified inhabitants watched as the night sky was consumed by an unnatural darkness. Panic rippled through the lands as whispers of an ancient evil resurrected spread like wildfire. In the modest town of Silverkeep, Simon rested against a wooden post outside the blacksmith's shop, wiping the sweat from his brow. At 19, his life had been a simple cycle of work and camaraderie, training under his mentor, Marcus, a retired knight who saw potential in the young man's unwavering spirit. Another day's hard work. Marcus clapped a firm hand on Simon's shoulder. "You'll make a fine warrior yet." Simon grinned. "Only if I can ever best you in a sparring match." Before Marcus could retort, a distant rumble shook the ground beneath them. The sky darkened unnaturally, and a chilling breeze swept through the town square. "What in the world?" Marcus's expression turned grave as he scanned the horizon. Screams erupted from the outskirts of Silverkeep. Figures emerged from the shadows of twisted, decaying forms that once were human. The undead swarmed with an eerie silence, eyes glowing with malevolent intent. "To arms!" Marcus shouted, drawing his sword. "Simon, get the villagers to safety." Simon hesitated for a split second before nodding. "Yes, sir." Chaos engulfed the town as villagers scrambled to flee. Simon guided them toward the old chapel atop a hill, believed to be protected by ancient blessings. He turned back to see Marcus and a handful of townsfolk forming a defensive line, desperately trying to hold back the advancing horde. A piercing shriek drew Simon's attention upward. Dark creatures with wings like tattered sails descended upon the defenders. Marcus fought valiantly, but the numbers were overwhelming. "Marcus!" Simon shouted, starting to rush back. "Stay with them," Marcus commanded, locking eyes with his prot copyright one last time before being engulfed by the swarm. Helpless rage surged within Simon, but he knew he had to protect those who remained. Guiding the villagers into the chapel, he barred the heavy wooden doors and gripped his sword tightly, heart pounding. Days later, Silverkeep was nothing but ashes and memories. News of similar attacks spread across the realm. Refugees flooded into major cities, each recounting tales more horrifying than the last. The royal council convened in the capital city of Eldivan, where nobles and generals debated their next move. "This is no ordinary threat," one councilman declared, slamming his fist on the table. "We must act decisively." But disagreements splintered the council. Some refused to believe that dark magic was at play, while others argued over the allocation of resources. Simon stood at the edge of the grand hall, having journeyed to Eldivan in hopes of rallying support. Frustration gnawed at him as he listened to the bickering. Finally, he could bear it no longer. Stepping forward, he called out, "While you argue, people are dying. We need to unite and face this enemy head on." The hall fell silent as all eyes turned toward the young warrior. "And who might you be?" A haughty noble sneered. "Someone who's seen the devastation firsthand, Simon retorted. The undead are real, and they won't stop until they've consumed everything. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. An elder councilman rose slowly. Young man, these are matters for experienced leaders. We cannot act on the words of every traveler with a tale of woe. Anger and disbelief coursed through Simon. If you won't help, then I'll find someone who will. Turning on his heel, he left the hall, determination hardening his resolve. As dusk settled over Eldivan, Simon wandered the cobblestone streets, lost in thought. A raspy voice interrupted his reverie. Looking for something, lad? An old woman sat beside a fountain, her eyes milky with age yet oddly penetrating. Just passing through, Simon replied guardedly. She chuckled softly. Few come to Eldivan without a purpose. Perhaps you're seeking someone. Someone like Eldrick. Simon blinked. Eldrick, the legendary mage? The woman nodded. They say he's vanished, but legends often have a way of returning when they're needed most. Do you know where I can find him? She tilted her head. Perhaps. But knowledge comes at a price. Simon reached for his coin pouch, but she waved it away. Not silver or gold. A promise. When the time comes, you must remember that not all is as it seems. Confusion flickered across his face, but he nodded. I promise. Satisfied, she pointed toward the northern mountains. Seek the Whispering Woods. Beyond them lies the path you need. The following morning, Simon set out northward. His journey led him to ancient libraries and hermit sages, each visit unraveling more about Eldrick's last known activities. Skepticism met him at every turn. Eldrick, just a myth to give people hope, one scholar scoffed. But Simon refused to be dissuaded. In a dusty tome, he found references to a hidden sanctuary beyond the Whispering Woods, a place where Eldrick was said to have retreated after the Great War of Mages. As he prepared to enter the Whispering Woods, a dense forest shrouded in perpetual mist, a voice called out. Heading into the woods alone? Brave or foolish? He turned to see a woman leaning against a tree, a sly grin on her face. Clad in leather armor, she had the look of someone who knew how to handle herself. Who are you? Simon asked wearily. Name's Lyra, she said, pushing off the tree. And you look like someone in need of a guide. I can manage, he replied, though the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. She raised an eyebrow. The Whispering Woods aren't just trees and fog. They're alive, in their own way. People go in and don't come out. But suit yourself. As she began to walk away, Simon sighed. Wait, you know the way through? She turned back, a victorious glint in her eye. Perhaps, for a price. What do you want? There's a relic in Eldivan, a small amulet with a red gem, worthless to most, but valuable to me. Retrieve it, and I'll guide you. Simon hesitated. Time was of the essence, but he needed her help. Fine. Where can I find it? Under the cover of night, Simon found himself sneaking into a guarded manor in Eldivan. It wasn't how he envisioned his quest progressing, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Locating the amulet in a display case, he carefully extracted it and made his escape undetected. The next morning, he presented the amulet to Lyra. She examined it closely before tucking it away. Pleasure doing business, she said with a wink. Now, about guiding me through the woods? A deal's a deal. Let's get moving. Entering the Whispering Woods, Simon immediately felt a weight settle over him. The air was thick, each breath laden with the scent of damp earth and something otherworldly. Stay close, Lyra instructed. And whatever you do, don't listen to the whispers. He gave her a puzzled look. Whispers? As if on cue, faint voices began to murmur from all directions. Fragments of sentences, echoes of memories, taunted them. Simon. A voice eerily similar to his mother's called out. He froze. Mother? Lyra grabbed his arm. It's not real. They're trying to lure you off the path. Shaking his head to clear it, he pressed on. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, dredging up fears and regrets he'd tried to bury. Visions of Silverkeep's destruction played out between the trees. Marcus's dying gaze bore into him. This is madness, he muttered. Focus on my voice, Lyra urged. We're almost through. At last, they broke through the tree line, emerging onto a hillside bathed in sunlight. The oppressive weight lifted instantly. We made it, Simon exhaled. Lyra nodded, but her expression was uncharacteristically solemn. The woods test everyone. You did well. He glanced at her. You seem unaffected. She looked away. I've been through before. You learn to shut it out. They continued their journey, arriving at a hidden village nestled between towering mountains. The villagers eyed them cautiously, murmuring amongst themselves. An elder approached. Travelers are rare in these parts. What brings you here? We seek Eldrick, Simon stated plainly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The elder's eyes narrowed. Eldrick is but a legend. Please, Simon pleaded. The world is in peril. If there's any chance he's real, we need to find him. The elder sighed. Even if he were real, why would he help you? Because he must know what's happening at the Undead army, the dark sorcerers. He can't stand by and do nothing. A young girl slipped through the crowd, tugging at Simon's sleeve. I can help you, she whispered. Before he could respond, the elder ushered the villagers away. Rest here for the night. We'll speak more in the morning. Under the cover of darkness, the young girl led Simon and Lyra to a secluded spot behind a waterfall. Reaching into a crevice, she pulled out a rolled parchment. This map shows the way to Eldrick's sanctuary, she whispered. My grandmother told me stories. Simon accepted the map gratefully. Thank you. Why help us? She looked up with determined eyes. Because I believe the legends, and if there's a chance to save our world, I want to help. As they prepared to leave, the girl pressed a small pendant into Simon's hand. For protection, he smiled. I won't forget this. The path to the Mountain of Echoes was treacherous. Jagged rocks and steep cliffs challenged their every step. As they ascended, the air grew thin, and the silence was broken only by the sound of their labored breathing. How much farther? Simon asked between breaths. Lyra consulted the map. We're close, but the hardest part is yet to come. They reached a plateau where a colossal stone gate stood, inscriptions glowing faintly along its surface. A guardian, Lyra murmured. Be ready. As they approached, the ground trembled. A spectral figure materialized, towering over them. Its voice echoed like thunder. Who dares seek the sanctuary of Eldrick? Travelers in need of his guidance, Simon declared, standing tall despite the fear gnawing at him. The unworthy shall not pass, the guardian intoned. Prove your valor. The guardian conjured illusions, each manifesting as a personal nightmare. Simon found himself back in Silverkeep, surrounded by the undead, powerless to save anyone. Not real, he reminded himself, clenching his fists. This isn't real. Drawing on his inner strength, he broke free from the illusion, the scene shattering like glass around him. He looked over to see Lyra trapped in her own torment, eyes wide with despair. Lyra! He rushed to her side, grasping her shoulders. It's an illusion. Fight it. Tears streamed down her face. I can't escape it. Yes, you can. You're stronger than this. His words seemed to reach her. She blinked, and the terror faded from her eyes. Together, they faced the Guardian once more. You have faced your fears and emerged victorious, the Guardian acknowledged. You may proceed. The stone gate groaned as it opened, revealing a path bathed in ethereal light. They entered Eldrick's sanctuary, a sprawling enclave carved into the mountain itself. Crystals embedded in the walls emanated a soft glow, illuminating shelves filled with ancient texts and artifacts. But the place was eerily quiet. Where is he? Simon wondered aloud. They explored further, eventually finding a chamber that appeared to be a study. On the grand desk lay an open journal. Simon picked it up, scanning the pages. He's gone to confront the dark forces alone, he said, disappointment weighing heavy in his voice. Lyra pointed to a section of the journal. Look here. He's devised a ritual to counteract the undead curse. Simon read the passage. But it requires immense power and more than one mage can wield alone. Then we'll have to find another way, Lyra said firmly. As they gathered useful items from the sanctuary, Simon couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally at the edges of his vision. "Time to go," he suggested. As they descended the mountain, Lyra grew increasingly quiet. Sensing something amiss, Simon finally asked, "Is everything all right?" She avoided his gaze. "There's something you should know." Before she could continue, the ground shook violently. Rocks tumbled down as the path behind them collapsed. "We need to move," Simon shouted. They raced down the mountain, reaching safety just as the path gave way entirely. Catching their breath, Simon turned to her. "What were you going to tell me?" She opened her mouth to speak, but a distant horn sounded a haunting note that chilled them both. "That's coming from the east," Lyra noted. Simon paled. "Ravenhold lies to the east. If the undead reach it." He didn't need to finish the sentence. They set off at a sprint, pushing themselves to the limit. As night fell, the imposing walls of Ravenhold came into view, illuminated by torchlight. The city was a bastion of hope, home to thousands and a critical stronghold against any invasion. But something was wrong. The gates were closed, and smoke rose from within. They approached cautiously, signaling to the guards atop the wall. "State your business." A voice called down. "We bring urgent news," Simon replied. "The undead army marches this way." After a tense moment, the gates creaked open just enough for them to slip through. Inside, the city was in turmoil. Soldiers rushed to and fro, and civilians huddled in fear. A captain approached them. "Who are you, and what do you know of the undead?" Simon quickly recounted their experiences, emphasizing the imminent threat. The captain grimaced. "We've had reports but didn't think they'd reach us so soon. We need to fortify the defenses and evacuate those who can't fight," Simon advised. The captain eyed him skeptically but saw the determination in his gaze. "Very well, we can use all the help we can get." As preparations began, Lyra pulled Simon aside. "About earlier, I have to tell you the truth." He met her eyes. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I was sent by Niles to mislead you." Shock and betrayal flashed across his face. "What?" He met her eyes. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I was sent by Niles to mislead you. My original task was to steer you away from finding Eldrick and ensure you couldn't interfere with his plans." Shock and betrayal flashed across his face. "So all this time, you've been deceiving me?" "At first, yes," Lyra admitted, her voice heavy with remorse. "But things changed. I didn't expect to care about any of these or you. Seeing your determination, your willingness to risk everything for others, it made me question my choices." Simon stepped back, his mind reeling. "Why tell me now?" "Because you deserve the truth," she said earnestly, "and because I want to help stop Niles. He's planning to unleash the full force of the undead army on Ravenhold tonight. If we don't act, the city will fall." He clenched his jaw, anger and hurt swirling inside him. "How can I trust you after this?" Lyra met his gaze steadily. "Judge me by my actions now. Let me prove that I'm on your side." A tense moment passed before Simon nodded slowly. "We don't have time for this. The city needs every defender it can get." Relief flickered in her eyes. "Thank you." They hurried back to the city's command center, where the captain was coordinating the defenses. The atmosphere was thick with urgency as messengers relayed reports of the approaching enemy. "Captain," Simon called out, "we have intelligence that the main assault will target the eastern wall." The captain eyed them skeptically. "And how did you come by this information?" "There's no time to explain," Lyra interjected. "Just trust us." After a moment's hesitation, the captain nodded. "Very well, we'll reinforce the eastern defenses." As darkness settled, the ominous sound of drums echoed from the distance. The undead army emerged from the gloom, a sea of shadows illuminated by the eerie glow of their eyes. "Archers, prepare!" the captain shouted. "Mages, hold your spells until they're within range." Simon stood atop the wall, sword in hand. "Stay focused," he told the soldiers nearby. "We can hold them." The first wave of undead crashed against the city's defenses. Arrows rained down, and bursts of magical energy lit up the night sky. Despite heavy losses, The undead continued their relentless assault. Amidst the chaos, Simon spotted Lyra darting between battlements, her daggers flashing as she took down enemies scaling the walls. He couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude and a lingering pain of doubt. A sudden chill swept over the battlefield. From the ranks of the undead, a towering figure emerged, Albert, the necromancer. He raised his staff, and a bolt of dark energy slammed into the wall, shaking the very foundations. "We need to take him out," Simon realized. "He's weakening our defenses." At that moment, a brilliant light flared from the western tower. An elderly man in flowing robes appeared, wielding a staff that shimmered with arcane symbols. "Eldrick!" Simon exclaimed. The legendary mage descended to the wall where Simon stood. "You've done well to hold them off," Eldrick said, his voice resonant despite the clamor. "But now we must act swiftly." "How did you know to come?" Simon asked. Eldrick glanced at him. "Messages travel fast among the winds, especially when carried by old friends." He nodded toward Lyra, who gave a brief, almost sheepish smile. Before Simon could process this, Eldrick continued, "We need to break the dark amulet that binds the undead to Niles and Albert. It's the key to ending this siege." "Do you know where it is?" Simon asked. Eldrick pointed toward a distant hill where a dark fortress loomed. "There." "But getting close won't be easy." Lyra stepped forward. "I can get us inside. There are hidden passages beneath the fortress." Simon looked between them. "Then let's move. Every moment counts." They slipped away from the main battle, making their way toward the fortress under the cover of darkness. As they reached a concealed entrance, Lyra activated a mechanism that revealed an arrow tunnel. "Stay close," she whispered. The passages were damp and suffused with a stench of decay. Distant echoes hinted at the horrors above. They emerged into a grand chamber lit by flickering torches. At its center stood Niles, clutching the dark amulet. His eyes widened as he saw them. "So, the prodigal mage returns," Niles sneered at Eldrick. "And you've brought company." "It's over, Niles," Eldrick declared. "Release your hold on the dead." Niles laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "Why would I abandon the power I've worked so hard to attain?" Simon stepped forward. "Because we'll make you." With a flick of his wrist, Niles sent a wave of dark energy toward them. Eldrick raised a protective barrier, but the force of the attack pushed them back. "Go!" Eldrick shouted to Simon and Lyra. "I'll hold him off." "You must destroy the amulet." They sprinted around the perimeter of the chamber, heading toward the pedestal where the amulet pulsed with malevolent light. Albert appeared, blocking their path. "You won't interfere?" the necromancer hissed. Lyra engaged him, her movements swift and precise. "Go, Simon!" she called out. "I can handle him." Trusting her, Simon dashed toward the amulet. As he reached it, a searing pain shot through his mind. A psychic assault from Niles. "You are no match for me," Niles's voice echoed in his head. Gritting his teeth, Simon pressed on. He grasped the amulet, its surface icy and slick. A surge of dark energy coursed through him, threatening to consume his very soul. "Destroy it!" Eldrick's voice broke through the haze. Summoning every ounce of willpower, Simon raised his sword and brought it down upon the amulet. A blinding flash erupted, and a shock wave blasted outward, throwing everyone to the ground. When the light faded, the chamber was silent. The amulet lay shattered at Simon's feet. The oppressive weight that had filled the air dissipated. Niles staggered, disbelief etched across his face. "No. This can't be." Eldrick advanced toward him. "It's over." With a snarl, Niles unleashed one final spell, the dark energy spiraling out of control. Eldrick countered, and the conflicting forces erupted in an explosion that shook the very foundations of the fortress. When the dust settled, Niles was gone. Whether dead or escaped, none could say. Simon helped Lyra to her feet. "Are you all right?" She nodded, wincing slightly. "Thanks to you." Eldrick approached them, his expression weary but relieved. "You've done a great service today. The undead army has fallen,